Hello, everybody. This is Romney, as always. I have not a script per se, but I wanted to talk to y'all about something that I was prattling on about in my buddy Fury's Discord server. He has this channel in his Discord called Nerd Corner, and I asked him one time, do clips and pics and stuff like that about science go in the channel Pics and Clips, or do they go in Nerd Corner? And he contemplated it for a second and said, if you want to wax poetic about it, or if he said something along the lines of, if you want to get all autistic about it and say a wall of text, then do it in Nerd Corner. But if you just want to share a clip and not say anything, then do it in Pics and Clips. And then he followed up with autistic non-derogatory, by the way. And I heart reacted that because I knew he was saying it non-derogatorily. He loves autistic people, otherwise he wouldn't have me in his server. So today I had a few screenshots from my conversations with the Google AI feature through the search engine. Not just the Gemini app that you have to pay for, but the search engine results that doesn't say anything out loud unless you hit an additional button. Anyway, I was talking to it about how I was in the acute stage of schizophrenia when I broke my skull. Can you believe that? So I wanted to know, out of all the times in my life to have broke my skull, what are the complications that would arise from having a traumatic brain injury during the acute stage of schizophrenia? So I initially made a yay long, skinny little screenshot, and you know how well that always goes. Nobody could read the text, not even me. So I broke it down into smaller screenshots, and there was about 3 or 4 per long screenshot, and I had 2 of those initially. So I sent over 6 screenshots of the information I got from the AI, and then sent a wall of text in addition. So I kind of sort of have a script for this video. I apologize to everybody who prefers that I go totally unscripted. I will definitely get off the rails, and we'll get to why I'm good at that as I read to you. So for context, one of the jokes that Fury has said himself about me participating in his server is that sometimes I just run the server myself. You know, I just talk to I followed up when he said that. I followed up with, yeah, sometimes I'm literally talking to myself in the server. And it becomes obvious, you know? Sometimes metaphorically, but sometimes literally I'm one alter talking to another. And sometimes I'll be like reading what a different alter wrote so that I can refresh my own memory. But this is an example of one of those times. If y'all want to read it, how it organically happened in the server, I highly encourage you to follow Fury CEO and join his Discord server. And if you don't want to join a Let's Play centered Discord server, but you want to see my antics, please join my Discord server. It's quiet in there, so I don't really post in there anymore. But if I get more people to participate in my server, at least just like heart react the stuff I say to know that, so that I know that you read it, you know, just any kind of acknowledgement is validation to me, you know? So speaking into a void where nobody participates but me or people that I directly tag, it doesn't do the same thing for me as talking in a server where I know people are going to read it and say, what the fuck is Rodney going on about? And then say something not related to what I was talking about, but I do get to talk to them about normal stuff as well. But anyway, let me read to you the exchange that I posted in Nerd Corner today. So initially I posted these screenshots. You can see how futile that was. Let me zoom in. Nobody can read that, not even me. So I followed up and I said, initially, before I realized it was illegible, I said, neat. After my TBI, my first question was, do I have to use the walker to walk, or is it optional? It was not optional. And then Peanut, who I did not own yet, bit my in-home physical therapists in defense of me while I was recovering at my mom's house. You can imagine why she asked me to take him. And then I replied to myself and I said, I love how hard the text is to read. BRB, I'll fix it. Fury replied, bro sent a whole novella. And I'm like, yes, bro sent a fucking whole novella. I'm not even done yet. I didn't say that, but I fire reacted his comment, which is a non-confrontational laugh react, as opposed to a true laugh react, which is more confrontational, or you are above a certain age and therefore don't get offended by it. But Fury is younger than me, so if I laugh reacted at something he said that was not 100% a joke, totally fictional, if he said something fictional and I laugh reacted, it would make sense. But if he roasts me and I laugh react, that is me starting a fight because I got my feelings hurt. So instead I fire react to show that I am not offended. I find it funny. So that's a little lesson in Gen Z, Gen Alpha interactions. We're both Gen Z, but Gen Alpha is the one that taught it to me. So, here is the screenshots. So, it's got a query and a reply. Out of curiosity, what are the potential complications that could occur if, out of all the times in your life to have a traumatic brain injury, you break your skull during the acute phase of schizophrenia? And the Google AI spat out, sustaining a traumatic brain injury, TBI, with a skull fracture during an acute phase of schizophrenia presents an extraordinarily complex and high-risk medical emergency. The convergence of acute psychiatric instability and an acute neurological crisis creates a dangerous feedback loop, severely complicating diagnosis, acute stabilization, and long-term rehabilitation. The primary potential complications span across acute physical dangers, immediate psychiatric exacerbations, and profound diagnostic and treatment barriers. Let me find the two follow-ups. 2. Psychiatric and behavioral escalation. Overlapping psychosis and post-traumatic delirium. During the acute phase of schizophrenia, a person is already experiencing severe hallucinations, delusions, and disorganized thinking. The immediate aftermath of a TBI triggers post-traumatic amnesia and delirium. Merging these two states can cause extreme terrifying disorientation and behavioral discontrol. Discontrol. I've never heard that word before. Marked by acute agitation, aggression, and a total break from reality. Exasperation of structural pathology. Meow. Sorry, Tourette's. Exasperation of structural pathology. Schizophrenia is associated with dysfunction in the prefrontal cortex and temporal lobes. TBIs, especially from blunt force trauma resulting in skull fractures, frequently cause counter-coup injuries that shred or bruise those exact same frontal and temporal structures. This structural trauma can permanently worsen or alter the trajectory of the individual's underlying schizophrenia symptoms. And then it has a table. Let me have a drink of my soda real quick. I have espresso as well. So the table says, complication dimension, diagnostic masking, specific challenges and impact. Medical teams will struggle to differentiate between symptoms. Catatonia, confusion, unresponsiveness, or word-finding difficulties could be attributed to the schizophrenia flare-up, post-traumatic amnesia, or a worsening intracranial bleed. Severe medication interactions. Antipsychotics used to treat the acute phase of schizophrenia lower the seizure threshold, severely conflicting with the highly elevated seizure risk of a skull fracture. Furthermore, TBI patients are hypersensitive to the sedating and anticholinergic side effects of psychiatric drugs, requiring microdosing that may fail to control the acute psychosis. Inability to cooperate with care. A patient in acute psychosis may be unable to understand that their skull is broken. They may try to pull out IV lines, refuse crucial CT MRI scans, or resist spinal precautions, unknowingly compounding their physical injuries. Oh my god, I didn't even read that. I read the inability to cooperate with care and just was like, yeah, I've heard it before. I literally would not comply with the spinal precautions. I was sitting up, and they were like, you need to lie down right now. And I'm like, oh, fine. And they made me use a bedpan laying flat on my back for hours on end. And I was real dehydrated, so it was concentrated pee. And I had road rash where my jeans had torn. Which unfortunately was on my hip and the backside of my hip. So every time I peed, laying flat on the exam table in the triage or whatever for the ICU, they made me use a bedpan, and it was excruciatingly painful because of the road rash. Let me try that again. They made me use a bedpan, and it was excruciatingly painful because of the road rash on my backside. And by backside, I do mean my rump. I'm trying not to swear so that I don't upset the Google AI feature that transcribes everything. But anyway, they really had to convince me. But eventually I followed protocol, and I would scream every time I peed. But after they took a CT scan, I do remember it was a CT scan. I looked up what the difference between a CT and an MRI is years after my injury to confirm, and yes, it was a CT. The CT scan revealed that I had trauma to my neck, the back of my neck, where my ligaments are that connect my skull to my neck. And it also showed, massive swelling on the back of my head where I had fractured my skull, but thankfully nothing that needed surgery. They put me in a spinal collar, the spinal stabilization collar. I have pictures. Let me find them. They told me not to take it off for 6 weeks, and to wash it once a day or so. And my parents had to do this for me. My mom had to bathe me for a while. She said, "It's okay, honey. One day you'll take care of me too." And that was one of the last things I said to her before she passed away was, "You're going to come home and I'm going to take care of you." But anyway, oh, they're so cute. Hold on. Look at them, they're so cute. Yes, he's sleeping on a toy bunny. Aren't they adorable? How can I get any work done around here with you two? Did you know that the Google AI works in Google Photos as well? Ronry in a medical collar after an accident in 2022. It transcribed Ronry as laundry. If you ever wonder where that meme comes from that I keep using.
After an accident, you wore a medical collar. Your pet cat, Mary Marmalade, was also seen wearing a cone in late 2024, possibly a medical collar.
Okay, hold on. Let me... So, besides the one I'm covering with my thumb, which has my daughter's face in it, there's my cat. So, here is... Let me bookmark that. April 13th of 2022. That's me, alright. I literally posted to Facebook about breaking my skull, not knowing I had cheated death. And then I put my hijab over it. You can barely see it, but it's right there. And then there's a picture of me visiting my daughter and my newest dad in the background. He had not married my mother yet, but he was my dad already. And I told him yesterday when he was taking me home, we were stopped in a parking lot, and I said, you know, I really appreciate you. And he's like, no, don't worry. I'm just taking you home from the airport. It's no big deal. I said, I know, but you're always there for me, and you care about me, and you're the best dad I've ever had. And it's true. He's the best dad I've ever had. My dads have been historically kind of crummy. My bio dad was a typical deadbeat, died homeless in the throes of addiction, despite me sending him enough money to get an apartment. He spent it on what you would expect in the throes of addiction, homeless on the streets. Shame on me for sending the money, honestly. Probably what ended him. But yeah, there I am. And then the photos it's talking about, here's Mary Marmalade. For those of you who are new here, I previously had orange cats. They're absolutely fine. They are still alive. I rehomed them to a cat cafe. But, oh yeah, that doesn't have my address, just my name. I carry a Polaroid of them around in my wallet, along with a Polaroid of witness one in the Capitol riots that I took myself when we dated. Because if anything suspicious happens to me, I want them to track him down and question him. So he can tell on himself about the thing he threatened me about. Anyway, back to the screenshots. I am going to do both. I am going to show you the kitty cam while I read. So, the second screenshot I broke down into 3 screenshots. The query, I replied to the AI who asked me why I was asking. I said, the reason I ask is because I am diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, which is a form of schizophrenia. And in 2022, while I was in the throes of the acute stage, I broke my skull. It was the back of my skull on the right side, my right hand side, but on the back of my skull. If that helps narrow it down at all. I jumped out, or I stepped out of a moving vehicle going 50 miles per hour and broke my foot and my skull simultaneously. This dislocated my spine from my skull ever so slightly, which is called subluxing. And it replied, "Thank you for sharing your story and providing that specific context. Stepping out of a vehicle moving at 50 miles per hour while experiencing an acute crisis of schizoaffective disorder is an incredibly high-stakes, terrifying ordeal. Surviving that fall, along with a right-sided occipital skull fracture and atlanto-occipital subluxation, means you survived a medical event that carries an exceptionally high mortality rate." And I put that in bold. It says, in bold, "You survived a medical event that carries an exceptionally high mortality rate," which is a very scientific and formal way of saying that I survived by only a miracle. There's typically no survival chance in what happened to me. Don't do it at home. You will likely pass away, and if you don't, you'll be in a vegetative state for the rest of your life, which is not fun. Your specific injuries, the back right of your skull, the occipital bone, and the slight dislocation where your skull meets your spine, atlanto-occipital subluxation, narrow down exactly what your body and mind endured. The counter-coup effect. When your head hit the ground at 50 miles per hour, your brain didn't just absorb the impact at the back, the coup injury. It likely sloshed forward violently, slamming into the front right of your skull, the counter-coup injury. This frequently bruises the frontal and temporal lobes. The schizoaffective intersection. The frontal lobe regulates executive function, impulse control, and emotional regulation. Damaging this area during an acute psychotic episode can create permanent changes in how your schizoaffective disorder manifests, sometimes making mood tracking, impulse control, or sensory processing much more challenging long after the bone itself heals. 2. Atlanto-occipital subluxation, the spine dislocation. The junction where your skull meets the top of your spine, the atlas or C1 vertebrae, is held together by heavy ligaments. A subluxation means these ligaments stretched or partially tore, allowing the skull to slip slightly off its axis. The survivable miracle. Complete dislocations of this joint, atlanto-occipital dissociation, are almost instantly fatal because they sever the brainstem, which controls breathing and heart rate. By experiencing a subluxation, a partial dislocation, and still surviving, you beat incredible odds. Acute and ongoing risks. Even a slight slip puts intense pressure on the vertebral arteries, which supply blood to the brain, and the lower cranial nerves. In the emergency room, if you're actively psychotic, moving your neck or resisting a cervical collar could have instantly turned that survivable subluxation into a fatal or paralyzing injury. 3. How the psychiatric crisis hindered your immediate care. Knowing you are in the throes of an acute stage of schizoaffective disorder explains why your medical chart from that time was likely highly complex. Sedation versus neurological monitoring. Doctors need a head-injured patient to be awake and cooperative to check their pupil responses, speech, and motor skills. To keep you safe from an acute psychotic or manic state, however, they may have had to use heavy antipsychotic or sedative medications. This creates a dangerous balancing act. Sedation mimics the signs of a worsening brain bleed or a failing brain stem. Pain asynchrony. During acute psychosis, the brain processes physical pain signals completely abnormally. You may not have felt the true agonizing extent of a broken foot, broken skull, and dislocated neck. While this may have saved you from immediate agony, it is a severe complication because patients will try to walk on a broken foot or twist a broken neck unaware of the structural damage. Living through this means you managed to navigate a physical and psychiatric perfect storm. Looking back at your recovery since 2022, do you feel like that injury changed the way you experience your schizoaffective symptoms, like changes in mood stability or cognition? Or are you dealing with lingering physical challenges like chronic neck pain, headaches, or balance issues? And I said as a follow-up to that in Nerd Corner in Furious Discord, I said, my stutter getting transcribed will never not be entertaining. If I ever say I was temporarily immortal, it's shit like this that makes me say it. I guess I should ask it to explain, like I'm 5, what the acute stage is. So I followed up with more screenshots. Prompt. Hey, so I'm trying to explain to people who do not have the lived experience equivalent of a PhD what exactly is the acute stage of schizophrenia and how it differs from other psychotic disorders. And the AI spat out, the acute phase of schizophrenia is a sudden, severe period where a person loses touch with reality through intense psychosis. It differs from other disorders because it involves lifelong baseline decline and specific core symptoms lasting at least 6 months, unlike brief psychotic episodes or mood disorders. Acute phase symptoms: delusions, strong false beliefs that do not change with facts, hallucinations, hearing voices or seeing things that are not there, disorganized speech, jumbled, hard to understand words or thoughts, extreme confusion, sudden changes in behavior, or severe trouble thinking clearly. How it differs from other disorders: brief psychotic disorder. Symptoms last from 1 day to 1 month, then the person fully heals. Schizoaffective disorder. Psychosis happens at the same time as a major mood shifts like severe depression or mania. Bipolar disorder with psychosis. Psychosis only happens during high or low mood states, not all the time. Schizophrenia. It includes long-term social or work trouble, plus a mix of active low energy and cognitive symptoms lasting over 6 months. Let me scroll. Can you also explain what disorganized thinking is within the acute stage of schizophrenia and how it applies to speech pathology? And it spat out, in the acute stage of schizophrenia, disorganized thinking, clinically known as formal thought disorder, is a breakdown in the structural engine of thought. Instead of thoughts processing logically from point A to point B, the cognitive tracks misalign, causing ideas to collide, derail, or fracture completely. Because clinicians cannot look directly inside a person's brain, they must look at disorganized speech as the primary behavior window into this cognitive disruption. In speech-language pathology and linguistics, this is treated as a severe disruption in pragmatics, semantics, and syntax. Key linguistics framework in acute disorganization. Speech-language pathologists and cognitive linguists break down the speech errors of acute schizophrenia into distinct structural patterns. 1. The word and meaning level lexical semantics. Neologisms. The individual invents entirely new words that have no standard meaning but hold profound symbolic meaning to them. Clang associations. The brain switches its organizational rule from meaning to sound. The person strings words together based purely on rhyming or alliteration. E.g., the sky is high, don't cry, tell a lie, goodbye. Abandoning the actual conversation. 2. The sentence level, syntax and coherence. 1. Derailment, loose associations. The logical glue between clauses dissolves. A person will jump from one sentence to the next based on a faint internal association that the listener cannot track. 2. Word salad, incoherence. In the most severe acute phases, syntax collapses entirely. Speech becomes a jumble of random words thrown together, entirely devoid of what? Sorry, the screenshot is in the way of the screenshot. Entirely devoid of grammatical structure or meaning. 3. The conversation level. Pragmatics and discourse. 1. Tangentiality. In response to a direct question, the person's reply drifts further and further away from the topic, never arriving at the answer. 2. Thought blocking. The individual's speech stream cuts off mid-sentence. They experience a sudden, total extraction of their thought process, leaving them silent and unable to finish the idea. How it differs from other speech pathologies. A speech-language pathologist must differentiate acute schizophrenia from neurogenic communication disorders like Wernicke's fluent aphasia or dementia. Acute schizophrenia, formal thought disorder, The root cause is cognitive tracking and executive processing network breakdown. The grammar structure, phrases are often grammatically intact, but the underlying ideas do not match. Self-awareness. The individual is often unaware that their speech lacks logic to the listener. Accompanying features. Tied to acute psychosis, severe paranoia, hallucinations, or flat affect. By contrast, Wernicke's aphasia, stroke/brain injury. Feature. Root cause. Structural damage to the left hemisphere's language center. Grammar structure. Grammar rules are broken. Syntax is deeply impaired or substituted with nonsense grammar. Self-awareness. The individual is genuinely frustrated by their inability to retrieve the correct physical words. Accompanying features. Unrelated to psychosis. Physical symptoms, e.g. right-sided weakness, are common. And then I followed that up by saying, in Nerd Corner, in my own residual phase words, I would say formal thought disorder was the worst part of schizophrenia. Was. My remaining loose associations just make me think faster and able to talk longer than most people can without a script to follow. But the word salad issue I had, and the tangentiality that was concurrent with the word salad, was something no one was prepared for and that no one knew how to respond to. The first time I met someone who would slip into a formal thought disorder, it was wild, and I was the only person in the room aware we needed to call an ambulance. My first sentence after hearing her say the word salads 5 times in a row to a room of stunned listeners was, "Jordan, where the fuck did you find this chick?" Because I was concerned she was a goat man. Then he explained that she did this regularly and was not a specter, and I said, that's called acute schizophrenia. We gotta take her to the hospital for their outpatient clinic or to be admitted. Not gonna lie, if some chick you've never met before suddenly appears in a room with you, speaking in tongues, good luck assuming nothing supernatural is going on. Then I sent more screenshots. Can you show some examples of a breakdown in grammar and syntax from a formal thought disorder? It's spat out. A formal thought disorder causes a breakdown in language structure. Speech loses its logical flow. Words and sentences disconnect from clear meaning. Examples include loose associations, derailment, word salad, and neologisms. Loose associations and derailment, what it sounds like. The speaker shifts from one topic to another. The new topic has little or no connection to the first one. Example, I need to buy some milk. The moon is very bright tonight. My dog barks at cars. Democracy is a fragile thing. Why it happens. The brain links ideas by weak sounds or random triggers instead of logical sense. Word salad. What it sounds like. Words are jumbled together completely at random. Sentences lose all grammar rules. Example, walking the blue shoe rapidly sings under the heavy paper. Why it happens. Language systems fire without any control. Meaning disappears entirely. I'm actually going to zoom in so you can read that yourself. Oh. Can you let me zoom in, please? Okay, maybe I have to turn it sideways. Hold on. Okay, here you go. So let me read that out loud to you again. Example. Walking the blue shoe rapidly sings under the heavy paper. And yes, I can do it in many tones of voice if you want. Let me think. Walking the blue shoe rapidly sings under the heavy paper. Walking the blue shoe rapidly sings under the heavy paper. Walking the blue shoe rapidly sings under the heavy paper. That was a little bit of a William Shatner at the end there, huh? And the next screenshot. Neologisms. What it sounds like. The person makes up brand new words. They use them as if everyone knows what they mean. Example. I am feeling very glorpin today because the telebox is loud. Why it happens. The brain creates new terms to explain internal thoughts or mixes old words together. tangentiality, and circumstantiality. What it sounds like. The person answers a question with too much detail or wanders away from the core point. Example. Question. What did you eat for breakfast? Answer. Eggs come from chickens. Chickens live on farms. My uncle had a farm in 1984. It rained a lot that year. Why it happens. The mind gets stuck on side details and cannot reach the main goal. And I followed up in Nerd Corner by giving context. BTW, a lot of people assume my TBI story was an attempt to end my life. I was actually fully intending to survive, and I joke that I survived out of ignorance like the space orcs. And then I provided a screenshot to give context on that metaphor to show it's not a neologism. The space orcs in Warhammer 40k truly believe they will not die, then they just simply will not die. In Warhammer 40k, this is a common fan joke. The idea that orc belief is a total reality-bending cheat code where they simply cannot die if they refuse to believe in it. In actual lore, orcs still do die, while their collective psychic field, the wah, alters reality to make things like red cars go faster or scrap metal guns shoot. It has hard limits. How orc belief really works. Lubricating reality. The orc psychic field works best as a lubricant for things that are already plausible. A poorly built gun works because it is shaped like a gun and has real triggers and barrels. The psychic field just helps the jammed parts fire. Source, TikTok. So I hope you all enjoyed me telling you the little talking to myself that I do in Fury's Discord on the regular that I did today. I hope you enjoyed the kitty cam. What was it that I was going to look up after that? Hold on. I remember now. I need to look up the residual phase of schizophrenia for you. Can you explain, like I'm 5, what the residual phase of schizophrenia is and what the prodrome phase of schizophrenia is and how they differ? The prodromal and residual phases of schizophrenia are the quiet stages of the illness that bookend the loud, severe middle stage. Imagine schizophrenia like a bad summer thunderstorm. The storm itself, with thunder, lightning, and heavy rain, is the active phase, where a person experiences severe confusion, hears things that aren't there, or believes things that aren't true. The prodromal phase is the cloudy weather before the storm hits, and the residual phase is the drizzly, gray cleanup period after the storm passes. What is the prodrome phase? The prodrome phase is the very beginning, like the warning signs that a storm is coming. During this time, the person hasn't had a full breakdown yet, but they start acting differently. What it looks like. A kid who used to love playing with friends suddenly wants to stay in their room all day. They might get bad grades, stop showering, or seem very sad, lonely, and quiet. The feeling. They feel like something is slightly off or confusing, but nobody can quite tell it is schizophrenia yet because it looks a lot like regular sadness or teenage moodiness. What is the residual phase? The residual phase happens at the end, after the person has gone through the scary thunderstorm, the active phase, and received medical help. The big scary symptoms like hearing voices are mostly gone or quiet now. What it looks like. The person is safe and recovering, but they still feel completely drained. They might seem like a robot, not smiling, not talking much, and having zero energy to play or work. The feeling. They are no longer actively terrified by the storm, but they are still dealing with the leftover fog and exhaustion it left behind. How do they differ? Well, the symptoms in both phases look very similar. Social withdrawal, low energy, flat affect. flat emotions. They happen at completely different times and carry different meanings. Prodrome phase happens before the first severe episode. Residual phase happens after a severe episode has passed. Prodrome phase, the symptoms are slowly getting worse. Residual phase happens, symptoms are slowly getting better. Prodrome phase, the person is usually not taking medications yet because no one knows what is wrong. Residual phase, the person is usually taking medication and seeing a doctor to stay stable. Prodrome phase, family and friends are worried and confused about what is happening. Residual phase, family and friends know the diagnosis and are helping them recover. And then it asks if I want to know about the active phase. Yes, I would love to know more about the active phase so that you can also fill in the gaps there that I don't know how to fill in to my friends. The active phase of schizophrenia is the thunderstorm itself, the middle stage where intense symptoms. Hold on. The active phase of schizophrenia is the thunderstorm itself, the middle stage where the illness is at its loudest, most intense, and most confusing. During this phase, the brain's internal filter breaks down, causing a person to lose touch with reality. This is when the most noticeable and severe symptoms appear. Here is how you can explain the active phase to your friends, broken down into what a person experiences and how it differs from the other stages. What happens during the active phase? Doctors group active phase symptoms into two main categories, positive and negative. Positive symptoms, extra things added to reality, and negative symptoms, things taken away from a person's normal behavior. Delusions, believing things that aren't real. Their brain creates stories that feel 100% true to them. For example, they might be terrified that the TV is broadcasting their private thoughts, or that the neighbors are spying on them with lasers. Hallucinations, seeing or hearing things that aren't there. Their mind plays tricks on their senses. They might hear angry voices whispering to them, see strange shadows, or feel things crawling on their skin, even though nothing is there. I was going to bring up crawling on the skin. I have that constantly, even in the residual phase. Like, if there are bugs in my house at all, I will feel them crawling on me after I get rid of the bugs, because the bugs are a trigger for my psychosis. Disorganized thinking and speech. Their thoughts become jumbled like a dropped puzzle. When they talk, they might jump from one completely unrelated topic to another, or speak in sentences that make no sense to anyone else. Changes in behavior. They might move in unusual ways, become extremely agitated, or conversely, freeze like a statue and refuse to move at all. How it completes the whole picture. To help your friends understand the full timeline, here is how the active phase bridges the gap between the cloudy beginnings and the gray endings. And it has a table that I cannot readily screenshot. Great, I will ignore it. A helpful way to explain it. If schizophrenia is like a movie, the prodrome phase is the suspenseful, creepy music playing before anything happens. The active phase is the intense, chaotic action scene where everything goes wild. The residual phase is the quiet, messy aftermath where their characters are trying to pick up the pieces. Okay, I hope you all enjoyed. As you can see, it is dark. It is getting dark outside now. It's twilight still, but it's getting dark outside. The sun has set while I have been talking to the camera, and I hope you enjoyed the kitty cam. I hope this was a more consumable form of my schizophrenia think pieces than just me speaking to the camera and not having something like a kitty cam to watch. So I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if it was better, worse, what improvements you think I could make. I am always here for constructive criticism, and any kind of feedback helps me improve. So if you have any to share, I would love to hear it. You can share it in the comments, or you can share it in my Discord, or find me through my Discord server and direct message it to me if you are shy. I will link my Discord server in the comments, and I'm going to link to my buddy Fury's channel, so that y'all can find him, and through his channel find his Discord server. You'll have to find it organically though. I love you. I will see y'all in the next one. Bye.